Hi, it's Wesley with Expandacraft, and we are here with Lewis, who is the brand new owner of a 12-foot Expandacraft Outrigger, and it's on a Hobie. Why don't you tell me about the Hobie itself?
It's a 2018 Hobie Pro Angler 14, and I wanted to make it more stable, seeing that I put this 3.5 horsepower motor in the back.
Which I think is overkill.
Yeah. It weighs 41 pounds, so had I not done this and just put the motor on there and put a counterweight on the other side, if I were to flip this, you're talking about maybe $1,500 plus in gear, including the motor, trolling motor I'm going to have, plus the gear that I would flip over. So with this, it's pretty much insurance that it's...
Yeah, so you feel pretty confident about the, I mean, we're going to do testing later in the water on another video, but I mean, you feel confident about the connections and how we made this thing fit?
You could literally, if you wanted to, take a rope from here and hang it off the roof. I mean, this is one of the stoutest connections.
Well, let's go in a little further and see exactly how we connected this.
So,
now, these flanges here that are permanently connected to the boat were connected with, and there's a flange on either side, if you'll notice. There are 10 expanding rivets. These are not standard rivets. These are waterproof expanding rivets, and they expand in the backside like a toggle bolt. So very, very stout. Not only that, but you can see that the cross tube is also directly underneath this side rail that is stock with the Hobie 14 here. And so it is an extraordinarily stout connection. However, all one has to do is pull this pin, which we keep these on a leash, pull all 4 of them, the 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and you can quickly disassemble the Outrigger. Now, there's also a quick and easy way to disassemble or take apart the Outrigger, which also requires you to just pull the pins so that you can disassemble this as well. However, what we are going to do is, because you can take your motor off and you can take the panels off, we're going to make this Outrigger slide into, like, nest up next to the kayak, and we're just going to put 2 new connector points so that when trailering, you don't have to disassemble anything, just take the 2 deckings off. Now, why did you choose to go with 2 deckings? That's a 2-foot by 6-foot deck plank.
well, I have a wife, and I would like for her to go with me sometimes and go island hopping around Dunedin. So I thought this would be amazing. You know, now I can go, I can take her with me if I wanted to, and it's just a really good setup.
So why go with an Expandacraft Outrigger instead of a Hobie Outrigger for your Hobie kayak?
This is double the weight capacity, I believe. So with the Hobie one, had I gone with that, I could put the motor, but there's no way I could have ever stood on this and cast netted or...
Well, let's move forward and see our forward connections and how we did the forward connections. Now, if you'll notice here, we have these 2 runner rails, and that allows us, because he's got so much weight in the back, that allows us to mount the Expandacraft Outrigger anywhere on those 2 rails that we like. So if he finds out that he needs it a little further forward, well, we can just change that. All right. Now, here he has this stand-up rig where you can hold on to a lean post, I guess. Now, these plates here, these are starboard plates. They're pretty stout, and you could have shot this bolt through that plate and been okay with it. However, we have a neat and tidy way to fix that. Why don't you come around here, and as I video, you tell them what we did on this front part. He's going to run up here and show.
So pretty much what we did was we put a plate right down here, a bracket, which goes in form of an L, and pretty much the screw goes through this plate, through that, which is attached to the actual kayak itself.
So you would have not only the structural integrity of the plastic that is stock to the Hobie, but you also have the metal flange, which has the heavy-duty blind, what we call blind rivet going into it. So that's pretty stout too.
And even though we put this particular tube here, it still doesn't interfere even with the furthest setting of the Mirage Drive. It doesn't matter furthest setting or closest setting, it never interferes with this itself.
And you can also get to your locker, and is that the sail post that we left room so that if you wanted to put the sail in there?
Nothing is being interfered with.
Aesthetically,
It's super clean setup. I mean, it's the cleanest setup I've seen so far when it comes to an outboard motor on a Hobie. So I'm super stoked with.
now I keep saying that the 3.5 is overkill, which I know is, because I've done it, been there. You could go with something as small as a 1.5. Our friends at kayakbuddies.com has one, and you're probably going to get 5 knots out of it. But when you use a motor like this one, or even that Honda 2.5, it's going to be very quiet, because you're never going to need anything near full throttle. It's just a crack above idle, and put, you're going to be doing 5 knots. You are not going to plane this boat. I don't care if you put a 10 horse on it, it will not plane. It's not going to go much more than 5.5 knots. Anyway, speaking of which, why a motor and an outrigger on a Hobie that's got pedals that you can go 4 miles an hour on anyway?
You can cover more ground when you do that.
Yeah. And what do you think about the ability to go offshore versus had you stayed with just the Hobie and the pedal power?
No, I mean, with this setup right here, it allows me to cover more ground. I do a lot of inshore fishing, but it will allow me to go a lot further and just cover more ground, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you won't think anything about a 10-knot headwind and a 3-knot current in your face. This will just plow right through, even with your wife on board. Well, folks, this is probably one of the cleanest installations I've ever seen, and I'd like to point out that I did not do the installation. I simply provided, this is the back end of my shop in a garage area. This gentleman here is the fellow who did the job, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how long did it take us?
About 3 hours, and we talked a lot of the time. I had to go to the store and pick up some hardware.
All right, so it wasn't, an incredibly long time. It wasn't a weekend project. Can you tell me about the motor mount and what we did and what we plan to do?
So basically with this motor mount, what we did was, let me find this piece right here. So basically, if you look at this decking, this would be the underneath of it. Mm-hmm. So this would fit in here super tight.
Right, you have to kind of cram it in there.
Yep. So once we put 2 pipes, which is what you see here, we basically just put 2 other screws and created this bracket right here. So when the motor torques, it's torquing on this as opposed to in any structural part of the kayak.
And I will say that we plan to do, or he plans to do, a little something extra here to buttress from here to here, so that the torque of this big motor doesn't twist this bolt underneath, because it could if you really gave it full throttle, which you would never ever need to do on this boat. Check us out online, Expandacraft.com. We're going to be doing videos of this boat going through the water and being disassembled and going back together. Just tune in. Expandacraft.com.